Hey, so there's no greater feeling from my perspective. I've had a few moments like this through my life where you start something with an idea, you get enough people to believe in it, to get it like halfway baked, off the ground, whatever, and then some awesome person comes along who can take that then and turn it into something even more awesomer. And so this is Andy Dykhouse. Andy I met shortly after moving to Omaha, and we started hanging out. I can't remember. And I started talking about the college. He had never been out here before. I don't know if he'd even heard of it. Can't remember. Maybe he'd heard of it. And 6 months into our time together, eventually he said something like, hey, there's a bunch of us that want to believe what you're telling us about this college and this school. And then that progressed on, and then he took an intern or two and a camp team or something like that. And then we started talking very seriously last Christmas about what the Institute could be if somebody with his vision could take it and make it into something great. That led then to all sorts of changes, and there's some of you I know that are Institute leaders, and you have this scholarship, and then there's a whole bunch of you who are like, well, I'm here on my free Monday, and so we've got to communicate all that to you today. But the stuff that he has planned this year is going to be amazing. And even the stuff today and the types of guests that he has lined up. And so this is awesome because I had nothing to do with any of this today. And that is a great feeling. So welcome Andy Dykhouse, new guy, to the team.
Thanks, Dave. Most of that's true. You can figure out which parts weren't later, or we can have a conversation. Thanks for being here. I know there was some confusion. I know there was some communication issues, and so I really appreciate you guys coming out today and helping us figure this out. Day one of the Institute version 2.0, and it's going to be good. I'm really, really excited about it. As Dave said, I'm Andy Dykhouse. I've been doing ministry for 15 years as a youth leader in Michigan and here in Omaha, and I have now been charged with running this thing that we call the Institute for Church Leadership. And it's absolutely my pleasure to do so, and let me tell you why. Why is it my pleasure? At the beginning of my 15 years of youth ministry, I became aware that people had a condescending view of my position. I can't tell you how many times when people found out what I did for a living would follow up with this question, so are you hoping to be a senior pastor someday? As if my position as a youth leader were only a stepping stone to a real ministry position. It bothered me immensely that youth ministry was not taken seriously. So I committed to giving no one any reason at all that I was anything but a professional. I was on time for meetings. I returned phone calls within 24 hours or less. Even changed my voicemail every day, stating the date and whether I would be in and out of the office. That lasted for a short time, and of course now we have cell phones and it's a little different. But I was going to give no one any reason to say that I was not a professional. As hard as I tried, I'd still run into people who just assumed that youth leaders were messy, immature, lazy, and only played video games and dodgeball while eating pizza with teenagers. What are you laughing about? Not that long ago, actually, an older lady walked by my office at the church where I was a youth pastor, and she walks by, and she stops, and she backs up, and she looks in, and she says, wow, it's really clean in here. And I thought, well, clearly you were I didn't say anything. I thought, well, thank you. That's nice of you to say. But, she was thinking that it should be messy because I'm a youth pastor. I've spoken out against the issue on Twitter. I mean, if you want to get something done, right? I tweeted to Ken Coleman, he was formerly the host of the Catalyst podcast, And he would say things on the podcast like, let's spell that again for all the youth pastors out there. And so I tweeted, said, man, that's not cool. Don't stereotype us like that. I tweeted to Doug Fields. Anyone familiar with Doug Fields? It's like one of the, if you're in youth ministry, and he's kind of gotten out of the direct youth ministry scene at Saddleback Church. But he's like one of the most well-known youth leaders on the planet, probably. And one time he tweeted out, hey, there's still time for you, late youth leaders to get your registration in for the Simply Youth Ministry Conference. And I thought, man, I actually tweeted back and I said, don't pigeonhole all of us into one stereotype. It bothers me that we have this image. He actually tweeted back and said, I see your point, but you can't say it's not really where we live. This is what happens. It is true. So I've gone to Twitter with the issue. So it's been a frustration for me for a long time that anyone in ministry, but especially as a youth pastor, that this was a stereotype. I want to say that we who strive to be in ministry must bring our very best to the table every single day. This is why the Institute for Church Leadership exists. But now I'm getting ahead of myself. So I want to talk to us today about the what, the how, and the why of the Institute. Simon Sinek says start with why. I'm going to start with what and work our way to why because it's the most important. So here's the deal, okay? What? What is the Institute? You may know some of this. The Institute exists to give you, the students, face time with the best ministry leaders around the country and locally. Why is that a big deal? So a ministry leader comes and talks about what they are up to in ministry world. Why is that important? It's a big deal because the people you're going to be sitting with, the people that will be on this stage, are leading the church right now. It's the very occupation you plan to go into. Knowing what these ministry leaders are up to, what they're working on, where they came from, and where they're heading is valuable information. Helps you plan and prepare you on your journey to becoming a church leader. So the Institute exists to give you face time with the best ministry leaders locally and around the country. It also exists to help you network with those leaders. Hearing from them is helpful, but knowing them is even more powerful. You should consider the guests that come to the Institute not just as a speaker on the stage, but as your potential employer. So the Institute exists to help you network with potential employers, right? It could become a job for you with some of these folks. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit. The Institute also exists to teach you the soft skills that are necessary to be employable. Work ethic, time management, conflict resolution, taking initiative and following through. These kind of basic skills will help you get a job and keep a job for a long time. So the Institute exists to teach you the soft skills necessary to be employable. Finally, it also exists, while primarily for you, the students of Nebraska Christian, it's also open to members of the larger community. So the Institute exists to provide ongoing leadership development for church and community leaders. You may find sitting at your table one such person over the coming weeks and months. Consider that a gift. Ask them questions, get their feedback. Show them how awesome you, the students of NC, really are. So that's kind of the what. It's kind of the why, but it's really, we're going to call it today, the what of the Institute. That's what we're doing here. But two, how does this work? What should I do when I come to the Institute? What's going on? How's this going to go? What does it mean for week-to-week gatherings on Mondays? Let me give you a few things we should all do when we attend the Institute. First of all, I want to show up on time. Being on time is a sign of respect, right? When you show up on time, you're telling the people you are meeting with, I respect your time. When you're late, you're telling the people you are meeting with, I don't respect your time. A person who is consistently 5 minutes late is consistently telling people, I can't budget my time well. I know what time the meeting starts, but I'll be there. I just might be. I can't quite budget my time well. I know that traffic's unpredictable, but I'm going to cut it close and hope I get there on time. Right? Being on time is actually one of the core competencies we're going to start measuring your freshman year. As you come to Nebraska Christian, this is a key thing we want to see if you can handle. And we're going to assess that by talking to your first serve mentor or your intern mentor. We're going to assess that by when you show up in class and if you're there on time or if you miss. We're going to assess that by, are you on time for the Institute, and these kinds of things. That will help us assess. So we're going to be on time. Another thing we do at the Institute is we dress appropriately. There is a school dress code, and I think some of you know what that is, and some of you are hearing more and learning more about what that looks like. You'll hear more soon. But a dress code exists to show respect to the people you're going to be around, right? That's really, in my mind, the bottom line for a dress code. That includes modesty and that kind of stuff, but it also just includes situation. And it is ultimately about granting honor to the people you're with. And consider this, again, the ministry leaders you meet here at the Institute are potential employers. It's a very real possibility that you could work for one of the church leaders that stands on this stage or sits at your table. So I'd encourage you to dress appropriately for that. This next one I don't think you're going to have trouble with at all. At the Institute, we cheer loudly, okay? You've already started this. I want to set a tone about what's normal here, because normal, in my mind, can sometimes go like something like this. You've been to a gathering of some kind, right, where someone was thanked or being honored, and someone says, so let's all thank so-and-so. And some people, there was the regular applause, and then some people thought, they deserve a standing ovation. I'm going to stand up. And it's one person, then it's two people, and then maybe three, and maybe it catches on. Have you been to this? Have you been to this gathering? And then sometimes half the people do it, and sometimes half don't. And if you're lucky, everyone does. And so, at worst, it feels obligatory, right? We just felt obligated to give you a standing ovation. And at best, it's awkward, right? I want to leave no question in the mind of our guests, especially at an introduction type setting, and you're going to get a chance to do this later today, that the folks here are going to feel like the most special people on the planet, because it's a really big deal what they're giving up to come and be here with us. So at the Institute, when we introduce someone, especially, I think it should be, and they are worthy of, a loud, raucous, roof-raising, thunderous, standing applause that will make each guest feel like a really honored person. So we're going to cheer loudly, especially at our introductions. Should we just practice this one time? I think this would be fun. No, wait, hang on. Let me set this up even more. So when I'll act like I'm going to introduce somebody, and then what you're going to do is you're going to stand up. This is not a sit down. You can't really give it, ask John Chilco. You need to have the lungs engaged, and you can't do that sitting down. So I want to hear it. I want to hear clapping, whooping, and you're going to stand up and go nuts for just a minute, okay? And so let's just practice this one time right now. Who could we introduce real quick? Okay, everyone, please give an Institute welcome for Tyler Shaheen. Yeah, right there. Yeah. That's right. Nice job. All right. I like it. Good job. So that's how we're going to roll with that. Oh, one more time. Okay, see, we're not going to do that. Thanks for being an example of what not to do, Reed. I'll pay you later. Okay. So at the Institute, we cheer loudly. We're going to go for it. Another thing we want to do at the Institute is just engage, right? We engage. And by engage, I mean we are attentive and not sleeping. A thunderous applause is completely negated by the sound of snoring, right? By engage, I mean we're taking notes. You remember things when you take notes. You can reference your notes at a later date. By engage, I mean asking thoughtful questions when given the opportunity. So I want to stop and say, in order to take notes, you'd have to have something to write with. Now, that could be a phone, it could be an iPad, a computer, it could be an actual old school pencil and paper, maybe a pen. Yes, right. We can appreciate old school for Joey. But you still have a dumb phone? Add a kid. It's all good. So plan to take notes when you come to the Institute. I happen to know next week you're going to want to be able to write some stuff down. I know Aaron will probably potentially bring some handouts, but be prepared to take notes at the Institute. We're going to engage. By engage, I mean talking with your peers and community leaders. Let me get right down to it. I've mentioned this a couple times. Let me paint a picture of how this could go down if you were to really engage with the folks, especially a guest maybe sitting at your table, right? Let's pretend, if I can find my spot here. Perhaps, so pretend there's a church leader from outstanding Christian church sitting at your table. Perhaps you engage that leader during lunch about what your major is, what your experience has been like so far, and what your hopes and dreams are. That leader shares their journey to ministry, what their church has been doing recently to reach more people with the gospel. As you stand up to leave, that leader says, hey, maybe you'd like to come to church on Sunday and check it out. At which point, you would have to say, I'd love to, but I'll be leading Sunday school at Awesome Community Church at that time, but I'll try to get there sometime soon. And next month you do. After the service, you wait until you can say hi to that church leader. Let them know how much you enjoyed the service, if you did, and that you'd love to hear more about their church if they had the time. You exchange email addresses, and over the next week, using email, set up a time to meet, because you check your email regularly and respond quickly. Right? That's what you do. That's what you should do. If you don't, you miss the opportunity with a church leader, and this potential situation can never happen. So let's pretend you check your email regularly, you responded quickly. You set up a meeting. During the meeting, the church leader asks, how's it going at Awesome Community Church? You reply, it's going well, but you really struggled with this certain situation you were put in. You ask the leader how they would have responded in doing so. And, how they would have responded to that situation, and they give you some advice. The next page underneath this page, not over here. So they gave you some advice. And by the end of the meeting, the leader is thoroughly impressed with your maturity and thoughtfulness. They ask what your plans are for the summer, and you let them know that you are looking for an internship. They mention they might have an opening if you're interested in checking it out, to which you reply, you'd love to. Skip ahead. It's January of your senior year. You have one semester left, and you're looking for a ministry position. At minimum, you now have two great recommendations because you were at Awesome Community Church earlier, and then you took an internship at Outstanding Christian Church that one summer. At minimum, you have two recommendations, and maybe you've got two job opportunities, all because you engaged a church leader that may have been sitting at your table. This is how it works, and this is what can happen. So we're going to engage at the Institute. Finally, just briefly, I want to say we clean up after ourselves. This is actually a big deal, not just here, but setting that tone for wherever you go will potentially keep you or get you an internship. It sounds small. We've already had conversations with potential employers and intern mentors that notice how you act when you're there. You need to clean up after yourself. So doing those little things in life leads to doing the big things. So go ahead and use the trash cans when you're here at lunch, grab your stuff, recycle, throw it away, and maybe even offer to take someone else's. Okay, that's how some of the things could go. It's not a conclusive list. I'm sure there's other things we could talk about how it goes, but that is the core of it, and that will get us started right here at the Institute with how this works. So we talked about what, and we talked about how. Let's get to the why. The short answer to why we have the Institute for Church Leadership is that the local church is the hope of the world. This is a quote from Bill Hybels, the senior pastor of Willow Creek Community Church near Chicago. I remember being at a conference where Bill was speaking when he added a caveat to that statement. He said, the local church is the hope of the world when it's working right. It has to be working right. I couldn't agree more. The local church is the hope of the world when it's working right, when it's being led well. But the local church is not the hope of the world when it's not working right and when it's not being led well. If the staff don't like being around each other, it's not working right. If the community doesn't know the people of that church care about them, it might not be working right. If there isn't a leader casting a greater vision for that community of believers, the church isn't reaching its full potential. If the elders or the board spend a majority of their time arguing about the color and cost of the new carpet for the sanctuary, it's not working right. If the city only knows what that church is against, not what it's for, it isn't working right. If the executive pastor is stealing money from the offering, it's not working right. If the worship leader and the youth pastor are having an affair, it is not working right. Unfortunately, all these situations have a true story attached to them, and most of them are probably happening in a local church in America right now. So the short answer to why we have the Institute for Church Leadership is that we need great leaders leading great churches. And the local church is the hope of the world when it's working right. But that's the 30,000-foot view, so let's zoom in close. Nebraska Christian College is about creating church leaders. But if you think that somehow after 4 years of undergraduate Bible college you will automatically land a job or keep a job at a healthy, growing, dynamic church, you're probably wrong. Just ask the hundreds of ministry majors, probably, who graduated from Christian colleges around the country over the last few years, but do not have a job in ministry right now. We believe that if you want to get a job in ministry, it's going to take more than a diploma. It takes a diploma. You need that. But I've recently coined a new phrase, and I think you should hear it. It goes like this. An education without a recommendation equals no vocation. Right? An education without a recommendation equals no vocation. That's very tweetable. It's only 56 characters. 70 if you mention at Andy Dykhouse. I'm just throwing it out there. Everyone's going to get an education. You also need a positive recommendation. I can't tell you how many summer interns and students have asked me, can I put you down as a reference? And of course I say, of course you can. Only one of those has asked me, and this is kind of a side note, only one of those has asked me, would you be a positive reference for me? And while most of them would have been positive references, there's a few times that when they ask me, I'm thinking, I hope that potential employer does not call because it will not be a positive reference. So, as a side note, always ask for a positive reference, if you can count on them for a positive reference. The reality is you need both school and skills. You need that diploma. You also need experience. Think of it like this. In class, you're taught the hard skills of ministry, how to play guitar, how to interpret the scripture, how to write a Bible lesson. In the Institute, you'll be taught the soft skills of ministry, and really any job, how to lead a team, how to set goals and evaluate, how to cast vision, how to interview well. There is a right and a wrong way to interview, by the way. For an example of how not to get a job, how not to interview, check out this video. Don't bring your mom to an interview. I just want to say that right to you and be clear. Okay? Well, yeah. Or your spouse. Or your children, okay? This is, yes. I can't wait to talk to you later. Don't bring your mom or anyone else to an interview with you. This is your gig. How not to get a job. It takes both hard skills and soft skills to be awesome. It takes both school and skills. And then you need to go apply this learning by actually getting experience in the church. And we're asking you to do that as well. It's a lot, and it's going to be difficult. You're going to want to quit. I hope, actually, at some point, you say to yourself, I want to quit. And it's at that moment that you have a decision to make, right? You can either buckle or buckle down. In my opinion, leaders don't buckle, they buckle down. Did you know that recently a list was published of the top 50 Christian colleges in the United States? Nebraska Christian College was not on that list yet. But Seth Godin in his blog reminded me the other day how famous a college is does not equal the success of its graduates. If you ask me, I think I'd say the success of the graduate is up to pretty much the graduate. In the same way, the success of the student is up to the student. If you're looking for a loophole, you will not lead a church for very long. If you take shortcuts, you will not lead very long in the church. If you coast, you will not lead very long in the church. Did you know that Omaha has a new brand statement? Omaha, the city of Omaha, has a new brand statement. The statement is, we don't coast. We don't coast. And the statement that follows goes like this. Here, you earn everything you get. There is no standstill, no off switch, only momentum, fueled by a drive to let go and do what we love. We are passionate about this community. Here in the Heartland, we are more than a cozy place to live. We are a great place to be alive. Maybe not for everyone, just anyone who wants to be someone. We don't coast. The thing is, you want even more than just to be someone. You want to be a church leader. This school exists to create church leaders, and we will do whatever it takes to graduate competent, loyal, smart, fierce, rise to the occasion, employable church leaders, because any other kind will quit, and the stakes are too high for the church to be led by incompetent leaders. Let me end by asking you a question. What are your expectations of yourself? I was in Hy-Vee the other day, and which is, for those of you not from the area, is a local grocery store, a regional grocery store. I was in Hy-Vee, and while I was waiting for my prescription to be filled, I walked over into the floral and decor section. And while I was there, I saw one of those like hand-painted looking signs. And this is what it said. It said, if we did all the things we were capable of doing, we would literally astonish ourselves. If we did all the things we were capable of doing, we would literally astonish ourselves. This sign raised a few questions for me. One, what does it mean to be literally astonished? Can you be figuratively astonished? Can you figuratively astonish yourself? I'm not sure that's possible. Another question, what makes you capable of more? Question came to mind. What makes you capable of more? Is there a way we can increase our capacity so we could accomplish more and literally astonish ourselves? Third question, the real question I want to ask, however, is this. What are your expectations of yourself? I wonder if the biggest obstacle to you accomplishing more is actually you. Perhaps you are in your own way. For many of you, all this is brand new. You don't even know what to expect. How hard is class really going to be? What is dorm life going to be like? Will I really be good at working in a church? Or maybe you have been here a year or more, but all the changes are adding up, and you aren't sure how this is all going to work out. But no matter the questions you have about those things, really the question you need to answer first is, how do I see myself? Do you see yourself as a potential failure who has tons of questions and isn't sure where they will land? Or do you see yourself as a gifted, passionate, radical, church-leading, world-changing son or daughter of the King of the universe with a unique call on their life? How do you see yourself? What are your expectations of yourself? How you answer that question could have drastic implications on your performance over the next year and where you ultimately land as a church leader. What are your expectations of yourself? Odds are you were not voted most likely to succeed by your high school senior class. I was not. I was voted nicest guy in my class and most likely to help an old lady across the street. That's right. But I was not voted most likely to succeed. Again, Seth Godin, if you're not reading his blog, you should be. He reminded me, there are many versions of most likely to succeed, but you get to choose the category of success. Choose wisely. Why does the Institute for Church Leadership exist? Really, it's the same reason this college exists. The reason Guy B. Dunning started this college several years ago, the reason Bill Hybels started his church, because the local church is the hope of the world when it's working right. The church isn't working right when it isn't being led well. We need great leaders in the church. That's why this college exists. That's why the Institute exists, and it's why you have been called to be one of those leaders. Last week, Thursday and Friday, myself and a few hundred other community church leaders attended the Global Leadership Summit. And one of the videos they showed, this line stuck out to me. There is a work that has been prepared for you and for which you have been prepared. There is a work that has been prepared for you and for which you have been prepared. They got that line from, of all places, Scripture. Ephesians 2:10 says, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." There is a work that has been prepared for you and for which you have been prepared. That's why we're doing the Institute. That's why you're at NC, to be a great leader. You got to put in the time, make it happen, get it done. And I believe you can do it. That's why we're doing the Institute. Finally, to wrap up, the other day I was meditating on a psalm. You know what a psalm is, right? I know, it's obviously a book in the Bible, but it's also like a psalm. The definition would be maybe like a song or a poem, right? And oftentimes it was sung. It had like music to it. And so I was meditating on this psalm. Don't bother looking it up. But the words are something like this. Where you're from, you might be the one who's running things. Well, you can ring anybody's bell and get what you want. See, it's easy to ignore trouble when you're living in a bubble. So what are you going to do when the world don't orbit around you? What are you going to do when nobody wants to fool with you? Ain't it fun? Living in the real world. You know, this would be better if someone just, look at, the people want to sing a song. I'll leave it to these guys. I'll be back in a minute.
I don't mind letting you down easy, but just give it time. If it don't hurt now, just wait a while. You're not the big fish in the pond no more. You were what they're feeding on. So what are you gonna do when the world don't orbit around you? So what are you gonna do when the world don't orbit around you? Ain't it fun living in the real world? Ain't it good being all alone? Where you from? You might be the one who's running things. When you can ring anybody's bell and get what you want. See, it's easy to ignore trouble when you're living in a bubble. So what are you gonna do when the world don't orbit around you? So what are you gonna do when nobody wants to fool with you? Ain't it fun living in the real world? go crying to your mama, 'cause you're on your own in the real world. Don't go crying to your mama, 'cause you're on your own in the real world. Don't go crying to your mama, 'cause you're on your own. Ain't it fun? Ain't it fun? Baby, now you're in the vest. Ain't it fun? Ain't it fun? Ain't it fun? Ain't it fun? Living in the real world. Ain't it good? Ain't it good being all alone? Don't go crying to your mama, 'cause you're on your own in the real world. Don't go crying to your mama, 'cause you're on your own in the real world. Don't go crying to your mama, 'cause you're on your own in the real world.
Well done. Thanks, guys. For the record, twice my freshman year, I called my mom literally sobbing on the phone. I just wanted to point that out. It's okay if you call your mom crying. It is okay. But I did graduate in 4 years too, so I made it through. You'll be fine. You'll get through it. So it's going to be tough, though, isn't it? It could be tough. And now you're kind of out here and you're on your own. I was talking with students end of last year and over the summer, and they said we really want this year to feel like we're owning this, like we're growing up, like this is our thing. And so it's going to take some failure, and it's going to take some fun, and it's going to take a lot of class and a lot of the Institute and a lot of church experience, but I believe you're going to get there. I invited a special guest to come up today and be interviewed and just have a conversation with me for you. So today I'll be interviewing Sharon Rues-Pettid. Sharon has a master's in communications from the University of Nebraska. She has worked at Mutual of Omaha for over 20 years and is currently the Director of Human Resources. Sharon oversees all the recruiting and staffing, works with employee engagement and corporate culture, and does team development and training. She's been married for 13 years and has 2 kids. Please give an institute welcome to Sharon Rues-Pettid. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Nice job.
Thank you.
Nice job. Yeah. Don't you feel like special?
I feel super special.
I thought so. Okay, first question, seriously, have you ever had someone bring their mom to an interview?
Yes, we have had candidates bring their mother. We have had candidates bring their spouses. We have had candidates bring their children, which we do not offer childcare in our lobby. And one of the things that we see with the younger generation, which by the landscape in here, maybe all of you, is, and you may have heard this term before, of the helicopter parent. The woman in that video was a helicopter parent, where they have essentially managed the lives of their children for them. They put together this spreadsheet of when dance lessons were, when piano lessons were, when soccer practice was, and everything was planned for their child. And so they feel really responsible to get them into the workforce and into something that's successful. And if the parent doesn't come to the interview, it's not uncommon that they'll call us to find out, is my kid getting interviewed? Why did my kid get declined for this position? It's not uncommon for us to have candidates, after we've offered them a position, to say, let me go talk to my mother and I'll get back with you. So it does, in fact, happen.
Wow. I don't even know what to do with that.
Don't bring your mother.
Don't go crying. So I invited you here because you're the director of human resources at Mutual of Omaha. Mutual of Omaha is one of 5 Fortune 500 companies here in town. You've been doing that a long time. Let's define, though, like what human resources is, just so we all have an understanding of what we're talking about here. What does it really mean to be in human resources in the professional context?
Absolutely. So human resources in a professional context is the entity in an organization that manages all functions that relate to people issues. So within human resources, that includes from the starting point, hiring a person, going through the recruiting and selection process. It includes the performance management of those individuals, so helping them have an annual review and rating. It involves paying those people through our compensation teams and payroll teams. It also includes developing them. We spend a lot of time developing our talent at Mutual of Omaha for jobs within the organization, which would also include succession planning and getting people ready. So it's all the aspects that are involved around people. Now, once I had a person that interviewed for a position with me, and I asked her, I said, why do you want to be in human resources? And she said, well, I really like people. I said, well, I'm not sure that that's the right answer, because we deal with some very difficult things. And in HR, we deal with, poor performers that we have to eventually terminate. We deal with employee relation issues where there's threats. We'll have threat assessments where maybe an employee might be suicidal. So there's all kinds of aspects that can happen. But that's what human resources deals with, all the people stuff that it relates to. So in my role, we handle all the recruiting and staffing. And so that's my people part.
How many people are employed at Mutual of Omaha?
We have 5,000 employees. There are 3,500 in the Omaha area, and then the other 1,500 are scattered across the country, and including Puerto Rico. I never want to leave them out. And so we have a large entity in Arizona. I've got some good populations of people in Texas and in Florida. We did, about 8 years ago, start Mutual of Omaha Bank. Went through some major acquisitions with that. So it's a lot to manage.
Yeah. You started to touch on this, but give us a little more, dive a little deeper into your day-to-day. I mean, what does that really mean when you walk into the office on a Monday morning? What are you dealing with?
Okay. Monday morning, well, that was today. And thank you, Monday, I was ready for you. So on a day-to-day basis, my team is handling the hiring and recruiting of all the hiring needs for our company nationwide. And so today was a Monday. We've got the front desk people are making sure that all of our new hires that started today have their I-9 information, are ready to get going. They are getting them into orientation, so there's a group leading them through their orientation part. So we kind of get them started and we're in good shape. The next thing we do is we spend a tremendous amount of time focused on with my team. My team consists of recruiters. I also oversee diversity, affirmative action, and a lot of other compliance functions, finding out what does our work look like, what things are stuck, what things do we need to kind of work through. And that's kind of the daily team management day to day. Other things that I'm doing on a daily process is we're also in a business improvement process, continuous improvement process all the time. So I'm what they call a value stream manager, and I'm looking at from the moment that a person gets hired or goes through the hiring process all the way till when they start in the door, how do we improve that? So I'm constantly working on that. I spend a lot of time in meetings. The baby boomers, sorry for any of you that are in here, but baby boomers are the people that created meetings for meetings. I'm a Gen Xer, so I can say that. So, but that's a day in the life of that. So I spend time coaching on my feet. You never know when you're going to have an employee walk in your door with an issue of, I had one on Friday, she said, Sharon, I don't even think I should be bringing this to you, but I wanted to run this by you. And it was an issue with an offer. Just being available. And I think that's the biggest thing for me as a leader, is being available. While I do have 2 managers that work for me that then the rest of my team rolls up under, I've really created my team to be really flat, meaning you can go to anybody. You don't have to go up a hierarchical chain. If you got a question or an issue or concern, you can talk to any of us. And we believe in being really transparent. So do a little walk around management, check in, see how, one of my employees, his girlfriend graduated from nursing school on Friday. How'd she like the gift we came up with on Friday? Those sorts of things.
Right.
So being human.
Yeah, right. It's good. So you've been doing this for a while. You've probably come across some interesting situations. You mentioned a couple with like who shows up with the potential candidate for their interview. What else have you seen? I mean, I would have thought surely no one's brought their mom to an interview. What else would I say? Certainly this has never happened, but it has. Give us some stories.
Well, I'm going to give you some stories that are a little non-recruiting related. So it kind of focuses on the whole acclimation and kind of gets into the soft skills that you talked about with people learning. And I want to share a few examples of where not doing the right thing with that soft skill impacted some people. So the first one is a story about a gentleman that we hired to oversee our IS our organization, our IT infrastructure, technical world, that part of our organization. And before he came in, there were some red flags about this individual, that how he might function in our company not so well. And despite those red flags, we said, let's go ahead and bring him in. And this person came into our culture, which our culture is very traditional, which you might expect with a 105-year-old company. Making a change is a little bit like trying to turn the Titanic. But
sounds like the church, actually.
Yeah. This individual came in, and he was a maverick. That's what we've kind of coined the term for him. And when he came in, immediately he had a very overinflated ego. And his ideas were better than anybody else, and he would publicly really put down and criticize the work of the people that had been here before him, or people that were even in the room that had done the work. Just disregarded that. And he was, rustling feathers all across the building because he was just kind of coming in like a bull in a china shop, and everybody else is wrong and I'm right. And the lesson that I want you to learn from that is that when you go into a company or going into a church, you're going into a culture. And one of the biggest things that we see today, and you can read this in just about any HR magazine anywhere, the biggest challenge that we see when hiring people or bringing people into the organization is culture fit. Do you, in fact, fit the culture? And this individual clearly didn't fit our culture. He was a maverick. We have a very traditional organization. We have a very respectful and polite culture. And we have a lot of institutional knowledge. And for this individual to come in and just kind of tell everybody that their work was, worthless and everything that they had done was a waste, and I can't believe you've been doing it this way, that was a huge disrespect to people. So when you graduate someday and you move into a church, I encourage you to be very mindful to learn the culture. Learn what makes people tick, what makes people, what they talk about, what their interests are, because this individual was clearly not a culture fit. And so that's something that is a soft skill that everybody needs to learn, no matter where they go.
Yeah, and because people want to learn the best way to do things. It's not that Mutual of Omaha is against change or against figuring out more efficient ways to do things, but you can't come in without knowing the systems and knowing the process and knowing the people and just start making changes or doing things the best way according to you.
Yeah.
You really do have to. It's so applicable to the church. That's a great one. What else? Anything else?
Well, with
stories?
that same story, I just want to say what you want to do is come in and assess the culture for at least 90 days. Just kind of, that's a good rule of thumb of 90 days, kind of understanding that. The other example I want to share with you is about follow through. Now, one of the things that Andy talked about is that, being able to follow up, of answering that voicemail or answering that email, how important that is. You have to remember that on the other end of that voicemail or that email there's somebody else, and they're immediately developing a perception of you as to how well are you, how responsive are you, or their lack thereof. And it's important to follow up, and a lot of people adopt sort of a sunset rule of by the end of the day, you respond to every email or you respond with a voicemail, even if you don't have the answer, just to say, hey, I got your voicemail. I don't have the answer to that. I'm going to get back to you, so they know that you care. Well, we had an individual in our bank that had gotten an email in July of this, whatever year it was, from somebody else who was raising a very significant issue to him. That there was a major problem. And that individual completely ignored that email. And what that ultimately led to is about 5 months later, we learned about massive financial problems that were happening in this area within our bank that this person had been told about in July and ignored. And so what ended up happening with that individual is he was demoted a few ranks. I was really surprised he was able to stay. But you have to follow through on things, and that speaks words on what your work ethic is like, your reliability, your responsibility, whether you care about another person. There's a lot of messages that can be sent just by those activities. So those are just two examples, I think, of some soft skills. There's some hard lessons that we've learned that I want you to be able to take away.
Yeah, great. So you started to go down this road already. What would you say, the top 3 or 5, soft skills that people need to have, or that you see are lacking in candidates as they come, or you get them on board and then you realize they can't do this? What are some of the top soft skills that we really need to have?
3 to 5 is a really short list to start with, first of all. So, I think one of the most important soft skills that a person needs to have is listening. Listening to other people and having the ability to kind of soak it all in. And when I talk about listening, I mean active listening, not sitting and, I pretend that I hear you talking, but really, what is it that they're trying to convey? And not thinking about what's the next thing that's going to come out of my mouth as soon as they stop talking, because that means you're not listening. It's important to listen to people, particularly in this day and age, because I think that you need to show and demonstrate to others that you respect what it is, that their opinion counts, their feelings matter, they have other ideas, and your way of doing things, your perception, isn't the only one. And I think that helps kind of lend itself to support a culture of inclusion, which you want to be inclusive all the time. A second skill, I think
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Because of the information age and the technology we have today, listening and distraction, right, are a huge issue. You're in a meeting. What should you do with your phone?
Your phone should not be in your meeting.
Shouldn't even be in the room. If
it's in the room, it has to be on silent. And if it vibrates in your pocket, just let it. Honestly.
Don't set it on the table. Don't set it on the table with the face down.
Nope.
Oh,
The only reason that it would be permissible to have a phone in a meeting is if you were expecting a really important call, and let's define important, okay? It's not, did you get tickets to the Husker game this Saturday? Is my, executive vice president calling me about an offer I need to make? That's the type of thing that I would have my phone out. If you are going to be expecting a call, you share that with your group at the onset of the meeting to say, hey, I might need to step out to take a call from Liz. I've got something that's in the works. So
Good.
no texting in meetings. It's extremely rude and distracting. Some groups or individuals are still a little perplexed, and it depends on the dynamic of the group that you're working with. Even if you have your iPad up in a meeting and you're taking copious notes about the meeting, some people think that, what are they doing? Are they on the internet? Are they on Facebook? Or those things? One of the things that organizations struggle with, and Mutual of Omaha is one of them, is the whole social media thing. We're a financial services organization, and we have access to a tremendous amount of data. And so we have to really limit what people can get on. But we realize when we ask you to come to work for us, that when we say, you can't be on your phone all day, that we're asking you to essentially remove an organ from your body because that's what you've been accustomed all your life. We get that. But to be mindful and be respectful, and it's very difficult to do that, but absolutely no texting, no taking calls in meetings, rude, rude, rude.
So listening is one, and that whole phone piece goes with that. What's another one?
Another one I would really say, I can't emphasize more, is really being very organized. And being organized in your day, and being organized in what you are to do, what your expectations are, and what your plan is for the day. A lot of people, again, if you had a helicopter mom, she did all that organization for you. And we see a lot of young people come into work and they want a plan. They're like, what is it that I'm supposed to do all day? Tell me what it is to do, which is kind of struggling for a lot of managers these days. And what it's led to is kind of the next soft skill I would really emphasize is important is initiative. Mm-hmm. Don't wait for someone to come tap you on the shoulder to tell you what you need to do. One of the things, and I can't emphasize this enough, and it doesn't matter what career field you're in, you're interviewing every single day of your job. I'm interviewing for my job today. I've been there 20 years. I know I came right out of the crib, if that was your next question. But I am interviewing every day. And every day, I have to show that I can add value. The hardest thing for managers to manage is mediocrity. So you don't want to be, Omaha's, our slogan now is we don't coast. That should be your slogan, that you don't coast. You always look, how can I contribute? Where can I add value? Take the initiative and ask those questions. Because there's going to be things that people don't think of, and they don't want you to be ready to be an order taker. So look for opportunities to add value. The next soft skill that I'd really encourage you to be able to do, and it kind of gets into dealing a little bit with conflict, is being able to speak with candor and conviction, and being able to do that very diplomatically. It's really hard sometimes to speak the truth. It's really hard to be honest with people. It's really hard to challenge other people's ideas. But you have to have the courage to be able to speak with candor and conviction. And I have a story, I'll share this with you. A few years ago, I had an executive vice president get all fired up about a program that we were working with. And she sent me this nasty gram about it, and I shared it with my officer, and she was just as mad back. And so she said, you typed this message, and this is what I want you to say. And so I felt like I'm in this this little love triangle weirdness. And I went to her and I said, you know, Liz, and this is my boss, I'm not comfortable sending this message. I think we need to sleep on this for 24 hours because I think we're just reacting to it. Mm-hmm. And she said, okay. Next day, she called me and she said, Sharon, you were right. So you have to, even if it is your boss, be able to speak with candor and conviction and be honest. And that can be very hard. Just because someone's above you doesn't mean you can't challenge them. And in the world that you see, and Andy talked a little bit about some of these things about what's wrong in a church, when things aren't going well. If you see things that are not right from an integrity standpoint or right from an ethical standpoint, your voice matters to someone. Finding that someone may be difficult, but your voice matters. So I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah. Good, thanks. We're running out of time. A couple more quick questions. If you're lacking in a soft skill and you find out about this, how do you go about, getting better at this? I mean, they're soft skills. It's not like they come up every day, but it's kind of an awareness thing. I mean, is there a way you can actually work on getting better if you know you're lacking in these areas?
Yes and no. That's my answer to that. First of all, for every person, whether you're an individual contributor or you're a leader, there's nothing more important than self-awareness. And what I mean by self-awareness is knowing what you are, what skills you have, and what you don't. Too many times people spend a lot of time trying to fix everything that's wrong with them, where you should be emphasizing the things that you're strong at. To get self-awareness, I encourage you, there's different assessments that you can find online. There may be even some that the college will invest in that will help you identify here are where your strong points are, and here's where what we call your derailers, which are the things that are going to get you in trouble. By being self-aware of where you're strong and where you're not, you're able to manage that. So if you know, like for me, a derailer of mine is I'm extremely bold. And so I have to temper that and know, okay, when I talk to my team, I need to take a deep breath, I need to sit on my hands, and I need to shut up and listen. And ask them a question and empower them. And so self-awareness is key. And the higher you go up the ladder in an organization, whether you're starting in youth ministry and eventually you want to be the leader of that, the higher you go up, the more important self-awareness becomes. So to get there, if you can't find an assessment, ask someone. Don't ask your best friend, because they won't be completely candid with you. Ask someone and tell them, I want you to be deeply honest with me about what I'm strong at and what I'm not strong at.
Good. Last question before we go. There's several folks in here probably who are about to graduate, who are going to be out interviewing, looking for jobs. Talk about the interview process a little bit, but really, like, what all do you need to have prepared to be going to look for a job? A paper resume? Is there more? Like, how can they be best prepared as they go out and do this?
That's a great question. Absolutely, you have to have a paper resume. You also want to have it via PDF if you don't already, so you can send it out. You also want to have a very strong cover letter to be able to sell yourself. Don't send out a resume without a cover letter. And almost every job application done these days is almost always online. The other things that you really need to have, and Andy talked about this a little bit about references. Have them prepared. You don't necessarily need to submit them right away. But when you talk to your reference, talk to someone and just say, before you ask them to be a reference, talk to them a little bit about, hey, if somebody called you and said, what's, Bob like, well, what are some of the things that you might say? And then go into the conversation of, I'd like to, potentially use you as a reference. It's a little deeper than simply saying, would you give me a positive reference? Because they may automatically say, well, yeah, and not necessarily do that. So kind of dig a little deeper into that and have references available. The other thing that you really need to have in place is a LinkedIn page if you're not on LinkedIn yet. LinkedIn is a professional networking site that almost every person uses. It's essentially a resume of yourself, of who you are, where you're at. So I would get that designed, and then you should be able to just cut and paste from your resume to fill that in. And as it relates to Facebook and Twitter and those other things, now as a federal contractor, which Mutual of Omaha is, we're prohibited at going to look at your Facebook page to see what you've been up to before we hire you. We're prohibited from doing that. Not everybody is. So as it relates to your Facebook page, you might want to just clean it up a little bit if there's things out there that you don't want others to see. You might even want to consider your email address. If your email address is sexybunny32, these things happen, people. I'm not making it up. Consider whether you want to get a new Gmail account or Yahoo account, but every little thing like that tells people about you. The other thing, just some tips on your resume. You don't need to include years of when you graduated. You don't need to include interests about yourself. Those are things that detect how old you are, and people can make discrimination based on that. But just really think about those things, and make sure that socially, on the internet, that you're putting your best foot forward, and that on your resume, you're putting your best foot forward, and have someone else review your resume. Have a couple people review your resume, and remember that your resume and your LinkedIn page are always going to be working documents. They're going to be things that you edit and improve and improve and improve. And if you're ever interested in having someone come and talk about LinkedIn profile, I've got a great resource that can help you do that.
Cool. Sharon, thanks for being here. We're out of time. Let's thank her for coming and being with us today.